Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. This is a very special show. It's the afternoon show. We want to give you a little something for you guys, while you're having your lunch and everything. We want to give you something. Listen, make sure you have water because what we're about to tell you might be a little hard to digest, but I don't know how a lot of the media outlets miss this. A lot of the media outlets missed what we're about to tell you. I'm waiting for my co-host to get on. My co-host is Crystal Jordan. It looks like she's almost ready. She's in the car right now, ladies and gentlemen. So, but she wanted to be on for this one because this is obviously a interesting development involving defendants in the case of that Kevin Hart has now filed with a Los Angeles Superior Court as relates to the lawsuit. So I want to make sure everyone is there and they can hear and just put a one in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Put a one in the chat so we know that you guys can hear us. Let's see here. I'm waiting for the one. You know what the rules are. Put that one in the chat. Without any further ado, I want to bring on my co-host, my ride or die, the official, the original, the real, ladies and gentlemen, Crystal Jordan. Let's go, Crystal. What's going on?
Hey, what's good? What is good? What is going on?
Man,
it is a Friday, and we have
breaking news developments. We ain't playing with you out there. I don't know how a lot of you missed this, but I'm gonna tell you what happened, Crystal. I was listening to the clip that is now going viral. Where I hope you're not. Are you
Dennis,
driving?
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Are you driving?
Oh gosh.
Is your car moving? What is
Dennis,
going
can you
on?
hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hold on,
Are
hold
you
on, hold on.
okay?
I'm trying to get out of this garage. So I can be out with you.
Okay, so she's in the garage, ladies and
You
gentlemen.
guys
She's in
just
the
hold
garage.
on. I'm trying to get out so we can talk about this amazing case. Give me 2 seconds.
Well, be patient, ladies and gentlemen. She's pulling out the garage. We don't want no interference. We want her to turn those lights on. She's. I didn't know she was backing out. I don't want her to discuss anything while she's driving. But in any event, ladies and gentlemen, this newest development, I was not expecting to learn this, and I'll tell you why. You have Kevin Hart, who obviously is a very well-known comedian who has resources. He has access to people. I'm sure he has some form of a human resource
Dennis, can you hear me?
department. Yes, I can. Can you hear me? I can hear you, Crystal. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm just making sure my I'm in the car, so things are a little different than when I'm set up at home. So I
I
apologize
know.
to
I
all
know it's dark right now. Did you turn the lights off?
No, I'm just in the car and it's dark out here. I mean, it's kind of overcast here in the city, but
Well,
um
listen. Oh, now I can see you now. I can see you now. Before I
okay.
didn't.
Okay.
Okay, so
Great, great,
I
great.
need you to pull over. I don't want you moving while you're talking.
No, I'm gonna pull over. Give me 2 seconds. I just needed to get out of that garage because the sound was bad in there.
All right, all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I stated, I did not expect this to be a I guess I won't say a backdrop, but Crystal, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
But what I'm wondering is, if we were able to discover this, why wasn't Kevin Hart's team able to discover this early on before making certain selections in this team? Wouldn't you agree, Crystal?
I would definitely agree. I feel like the information that you showed, that you sent over to me earlier today, I will say this. A lot of times when people are hiring assistants, because I've actually been in charge of hiring assistants for clients in the past. A
Hmm.
lot of times you especially when people are young and they may not have a lot of experience, you may really go on the conversation if they present themselves well, if they have personal references that you trust. So although it's unfortunate because you definitely don't want an assistant. Having an assistant that's untrustworthy is the most dangerous thing because they have access to everything that you do. But in this case, a lot of these allegations are of a personal nature. And so there's a good chance that even if they had done their due diligence, that information would not have come up unless they had seen the court, what was filed in court.
Okay. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, so I know you're here to supposed to talk about the Jeezy, Jeannie May. Am I pronouncing the name right?
It's Jeannie Mai.
Jeannie Mai, Jeannie Mai
Mhm.
story. We're going to talk about that, but we're not going to talk about that right now because we're going to hold that for down the road. So you got to stay in, you got to be locked in. But we want to talk about this latest development. And Crystal, your camera went out again, so I don't know if that's, but your camera's in again. Okay, so what we're trying to say is that Kevin Hart didn't. I believe he didn't do his due diligence. Had that been information that I had early on, I may have handled the situation a lot differently if I was in his shoes. And what are we talking about? We're talking about. Let me bring some exhibits up here real quickly. I want to bring exhibits here. Okay, so we're talking about. Hold on, Crystal. I'm losing you, Crystal, but come on back in. Okay, so we're talking about Maisha Shakes. Maisha Shakes is the co-defendant and or I guess she's the co-defendant of Tasha K in the lawsuit Kevin Hart filed. So why is this significant? Why is this significant? She's obviously been accused of several things in the lawsuit, and one of those things, one or two of those things are very significant because it may show during down the road that perhaps she might have a pattern of doing things that would suggest that Kevin probably should have did his homework. Also, based on a video I saw that she actually did, that kind of alerted me to something wasn't adding up here because as I looked at the video, and this is on her YouTube channel, you guys can go check out her YouTube channel. But that video kind of made me want to see that perhaps maybe there's something else out there that could be give me some indication. Maybe Tasha K knew she had the right person to get on her platform because a good
Oh, she
producer.
definitely.
You think based on that she probably knew, right?
I think she definitely knew she had the right person. I also think that this, we were talking the other night, we were trying to figure out if this was about clout, right? Because we were like, okay, someone that wants $30,000 a year to keep quiet, it may not necessarily be about money, but this shows that, if you're looking at a character reference, this would solidify that this person is interested in at least getting an audience, right? At least being in front of people. So I think for me, it definitely explains why Tasha K was able to bring her on the show, why she was so excited about the show. We do know that Tasha K's show pays people, but I think this situation, what was even probably a bigger draw was the fact that she knew she'd be in front of millions of people.
Right. So let me bring the exhibit out. Let's just go into it. Let the people see this is a news article. It's a very significant news article. It's involved someone that I know very well because that person was associated with one of my family members. But let's go. This is a report that was broken back in 2016 on TMZ, and I'm gonna read the article. Meta World Peace has filed a restraining order against a woman who has allegedly made his life a living hell over the last few months. According to TMZ Sports, World Peace, who re-signed with the Lakers on Wednesday, is alleging that a woman named Maisha Shakes has tormented him and his family. She has allegedly destroyed his property, threatened him with violence, and even waited for his children to leave school and confronted them. Now that's pretty scary. It's apparently gotten so bad that World Peace filed court documents asking a judge to grant him a restraining order that would keep the woman 1 million yards away from him. How many feet are 1 million yards, Crystal?
I don't know. It's a bunch of feet. That
Okay.
means that he is definitely afraid of afraid of what this woman would do. Probably not so much physically as her causing a disturbance or trying to get attention. So I'm assuming that that's why it was 1 million feet, because he doesn't. That means she can't be anywhere near him. She can't be in a building if he's there. So she can't cause embarrassment if there's issues that he thinks that she may try to bring to light in a public setting.
Right. So basically, from his family, his home, his workplace, his kids' school, and even Earth. Like, wow, even Earth. so, so
Even Earth.
TMZ Sports reports that World Peace approached the LAPD recently and told them that Shakes has been pestering him with abusive emails since 2015. He claims that he doesn't know Shakes, but says that her emails included violent threats against him. One reportedly said, "I apologize in advance. I'm going out with a bang. Wow. This will be the worst thing to ever happen in Westwood. Call cops. I'm ready." Wow. So this is what he's alleging, and what a judge has actually signed off on. It granted him a restraining order. While it wasn't 100 feet, I mean, a million feet, a million yards, it was at least 100 yards. So the question I have is, why didn't Kevin Hart know anything about this? Like, do you think he even knew something about this? This is kind of disturbing.
I don't think he knew, and I guess we have to ask, like, if someone files a court restraining order, I guess it is public information if his team did a background check on her. I guess it is public information, but I also think there has to be more to that lawsuit. We don't know what that is, but for her to do that without any cause and not know him, that's hard to believe. There's something else to that. I don't know what it is, but the fact that the judge granted it means that there was something there that made him feel like it was in the best interest of the court to grant that restraining order. But I just feel like there has to be more to that case.
Okay, and we're gonna look into that. The question is, the lawyer in the lawsuit for Kevin Hart never made reference to that. But I think that it would be something significant at some point. We also have another journalist that's going to be joining us, Crystal, and her name is Lauren Burke. She was inside the courtroom for Jonathan Major's case. She came into, I would say she came in towards the latter part of the case, but she was able to give some very important perspective to this case that many have not reported. So I'm going to bring up in a minute. We're going to discuss her thoughts on the case and why she believes the outcome what came out to what it is today. With that said, do you think that Maisha will show up to court?
I'm not gonna lie. If I was Maisha or someone that cared about Maisha, I would definitely be trying to consult her or counsel her to get out of this situation. This is probably not going to end well for her, and it also makes me rethink my position that I initially stated, because because of the NDA, and she stated there were loopholes in the NDA. I assumed that she had gotten counsel, but this, according to these new developments, I'm not sure. I don't trust her judgment when it comes to that, because if there's enough for the court to grant it the restraining order, then that totally changed my mind about her feeling that she would be able to get out of that NDA.
Okay, well, I would agree with you. Lauren, are you there? I know you got a phone call coming in. Are you on that call?
Yeah, the phone never stops. How you doing? How are you,
Good.
Crystal? How are you, Dennis? How
I'm
are
doing
you?
Hi,
well.
Lauren.
I'm doing well. Can you get on camera?
No, I'm kind of not ready for camera. If
Okay,
you give me
okay,
a little bit
okay,
more notice, I would be. I just
okay,
have to be in
okay.
a
No
position
problem.
that,
No
but
problem.
I get
But
you. It always looks better when people on camera. I get it.
yeah, no, it's all good. We got Crystal driving in the car. I'm the only one
Oh, I
actually.
love it. I
Crystal
love
is
the driving in the
at her.
car.
She's at her destination. She's just waiting for valet to take her car. But
Okay.
that was
Oh,
not. That was about 2 minutes of unsafe behavior. I agree. I apologize.
I
You
love
it's
the
all
guys,
car.
good.
please have mercy.
It's all good. Uh, Lauren, let's talk about. I looked at one of your videos, and it was talking about the jurors, the jurors as well as the other jurors, the media for the public. And I
Right.
thought it was pretty important that people understand the significance of having good reporting coming from the courtroom and how reporting can sway the outcome of a case. While judges usually, admonish jurors or tell jurors not to look at the reporting, can you explain to those who are watching why this case in particular was concerning as the reports came out, the initial reports, and then some of the things that wasn't even talked about during I guess the conclusion of this trial.
Well, one of the things, of course, is not discussed is that the media, of course, is a form of jury in that courtroom, particularly when you do not have cameras in the courtroom. So, as you know, there was a gag order on everybody, and then, of course, the judge ruled that there would be no cameras in the courtroom. At first, he actually didn't let the media in the courtroom, which was even more interesting at the very, very beginning. So, of course, everything that you see, I mean, this is a courtroom that doesn't hold more than 100 people. It holds less than, I would say, 50. So every day when I would go in, I would count the number of media that was in there. So it was about 15 to 20 media people, all of whom were white, except for the last week. We had Jerika Duncan from CBS for a few minutes in court, and another black reporter from Inside Edition. So effectively, you have a bunch of white folks judging a 6'1", very muscular black male who just played a very aggressive antagonist in a boxing movie. That is always a bad combination of facts. Even if you didn't have those facts, it would be a bad combination. Then you have an almost all white jury, except for one black woman who they tried to get rid of in the last 3 days of the case. So they tried to put,
The sleeping juror.
yeah, the sleeping juror. And I will say, not that she should have been asleep during this particular testimony, but there was a domestic violence expert on the stand that was quite long and completely disconnected to Ms. Jabari or Mr. Majors, had nothing specifically to do with the defendant or the plaintiff in the case or the state or anybody else. And it was, the testimony, quite frankly, was too long. And a lot of people dozed off during it. This is not to make excuses for that juror, but that was the reason, you're correct, that they tried to get her off the jury.
So
You know,
so
my feeling, my feeling on this is that to be clear, I think Mr. Majors was railroaded. I think if anybody looked at the facts of this case very carefully, he was the one de-escalating. He's the one trying to get away from the situation. She's the one escalating. He had evidence that he had been assaulted by her, which was presented to the police, which is why she was arrested months beforehand. That evidence was completely ignored. Then we had a New York City police detective on the stand, and all of his testimony was effectively blocked by objections from the prosecution, which were sustained by the judge.
Crystal, hearing this right now, what is your thoughts?
That's really interesting. I do appreciate her pointing out that the witness that was basically bringing the charges or allegations against Jonathan Majors was arrested, and as well, if that information was not brought into the trial, that's interesting. But I do want to ask Lauren, and you as well, Dennis. I know you know about this case as well. Like, he was convicted. They came back with a guilty verdict, but it was not on. It was on misdemeanor charges, correct? It was not
It was
what
never a
people are
felony case.
assuming, right?
Right,
But people,
right.
I think, they hear a guilty verdict, and they think it's that there's more to that than a misdemeanor.
Right. Of course, most people would read the headlines and see he was convicted of harassment and assault and say to themselves, wow, he was convicted of harassment and assault. And we live in a headline world and not a detailed, nuanced world. So, of course, people would take that away from it. But effectively, one of the charges is as if you were getting a ticket. The second charge, of course, is a misdemeanor assault that is typically not brought into a courtroom. Incredibly, both of those charges were brought into a courtroom, which is an extremely rare thing at a time when this particular prosecutor appears to be very energetic about bringing certain things into the courtroom that I think are extremely questionable cases. And I am referring to the Kevin Porter case and the Adam Foss case. Adam Foss was acquitted, and Kevin Porter, I'm almost certain, will be acquitted because the person who was his girlfriend has told the DA's office that she was not assaulted, and then got on national TV with Roland Martin and said she wasn't assaulted. But for some reason, Alvin Bragg's office has continued to pursue that case. So something is up here. This was supposed to be a progressive prosecutor. He is prosecuting people on things that are typically not prosecuted through that office. I think everybody is concerned about sexual violence and sexual assault and domestic violence. The question is, do you bring these types of cases into a courtroom, and particularly cases where the evidence, specifically cases where the evidence is just not there, which was the case in the Adam Foss case, it was the case in the Kevin Porter case, and now it's the case in the John Majors case.
And Foss was represented by Priya Chandra as well, correct?
Exactly, correct.
Okay, so she's caught a lot of flack online, and I think particularly that's probably because of some of the reporting. But how do you think she did as a attorney in this case?
I thought she did well. I think people need to understand that two things. One is this judge was clearly leaning on the side of the prosecution, and when that is the case, you are not really. What I saw in there was that they were not really allowed to present their defense. Almost every objection. When I say that the police detectives' testimony was blocked by objections that were sustained by the judge, objections by the prosecution, I'm talking 20 to 25 to 30 objections in a row. So you've got, Mr. Majors' attorney attempting to try to execute a line of questioning, and he is blocked sentence after sentence after sentence. And I stopped counting after 20 objections that were sustained. So then how does an attorney present a defense when they can't present certain evidence in court? The judge is siding with the prosecution, I would say more than 80% of the time. And while I would say there were some mistakes by his attorneys, the one that let open the door to the September 2022 text messages, for example, those text messages should not have been allowed in evidence anyway, because those text messages have absolutely nothing to do with the case involving Ms. Jabari. So we had plenty of evidence. We had text messages, we had audio, we had Mr. Majors calling the police, we had that audio, we had video. As you might know, New York is covered with video cameras. So we had video of the two of them coming out of the car, her chasing him down the street, and yet none of that seemed to matter. It felt a little bit like we were in the 1940s and 50s, like I was watching, one of these movies, Mississippi Burning or something like that, where I had that feel of no matter what the facts are, there's going to be a certain outcome.
So when you said it was, so people can understand, the gag order was only applicable to the defense and the prosecution, not the members of the press.
No, not at all. But there was a discussion prior to the case really getting started about whether or not the media would be allowed to report information that was not admissible in the courtroom, which, as you know, there's no way you could govern that. Okay. So,
no way.
But the fact that there was even a discussion was interesting, but that told me that the judge is obsessed with the media, is what that told me. So, there we go.
Okay. So this judge sustained a majority of the defense's examination of this cop. Now, the transcript obviously is going to be pretty interesting if they don't put a seal on that. Do you suspect that there will be a sealing of the transcript?
I think they'll seal anything that would benefit Jonathan Majors. That seemed to be the general pattern. Anything that benefited Jonathan Majors suddenly couldn't be seen. So, for example, there was a scene up there where the police detective had his folder for that case, his case file, which was pretty big. and he's flipping through it for dates, et cetera, and so on specific questions. And of course, the pictures of Majors' injuries allegedly at the hands of Ms. Jabari were in that case file. So the judge saw that and told him to hide that and put that face down on the table. I mean, so what does that tell me? We're not dealing in a world where you want the jury, the court, and the public to know all the facts of this situation and to form a learned opinion based on the full context. This may have been a situation where you have two people who are dating who are fighting each other all the time. They may be physically tit for tat all the time. That is not a case typically brought into court. So I got the distinct feeling that what we're sealing and what we can't see and what's inadmissible too often was decided against Mr. Majors.
Okay, so I have several problems with this. The first question someone asks is, why was there a gag order in the first place? What was the argument that was made to the judge for there to be a gag order even issued?
You know, that's a really good question. As somebody who typically watches federal court in Washington, D.C. and in Alexandria, Virginia, you know, I'm used to first of all, there is nothing that you can bring into federal court. You can't bring your phone into federal court. I'm talking about in Washington, D.C. and Alexandria specifically. You can bring no electronic device into the courtroom. In Manhattan criminal court, you could bring a camera, a cell phone. If you remember the press, a laptop, you could type on your laptop and, of course, use your cell phone to send text, etc., and so on. Anytime I see a situation,
while court is in session,
while court is in session, yes. In fact, they were actually pretty lenient about people who were not press using their phones in terms of text. I'm not talking, of course, a audio call, but obviously text and tweeting, and you'd be quietly doing that. They didn't care. They weren't going around asking. It wasn't really until the last few days that they started to get strict and say, hey, if you don't have a yellow card and show that you're media, your phone has to be out of sight. But you got 20 people sitting in there with their laptops open and their phones in their hands, media, using during open court. And this is not some solemn, this is not a few good men where it's silent in the courtroom. I mean, the police radios are going off. There's noise outside. We're in Lower Manhattan. There was windows at the top of the courtroom that they had to close because there's outside noise. So it wasn't like, this sort of stereotypical thing that I think we all have in our head that, oh, this is silent in the courtroom. But it's a situation where when I hear gag order and then I hear no cameras in the age of technology that we live in, I know that we have a judge that probably doesn't want to be second guessed, doesn't want to be questioned, doesn't want to be analyzed by the public. That's what the real reason is. See, in federal court, we have terrorists and people who are dangerous. So there's good reason to not have.
Quite honestly, federal court, you have federal cases that involve very high levels,
Right.
Sensitive information, you need
Right.
security clearances. So I understand the federal court. I mean, some national security stuff as well,
Right.
so I understand that. But in this instance, to have a gag order, I don't know if you actually answered it. Why was there an argument made to the judge that would justify the gag? I'm just curious about the gag order, because anytime I hear a gag order, and only times I hear that is perhaps when there's a family court case, the children involved, and certain information can't be said.
Right.
But I don't know why would this be especially a misdemeanor case?
Well, it's funny. I have a relative in New York who's a judge, and she started as a family court judge. She had to walk around the courthouse with an armed guard by her side to go to lunch. It was understood why you would have a gag order, as you just referenced. People get very emotional with family court cases, for example. This is not that type of case. I was not there when this decision happened in court, so I did not witness what the exact conversation was. But my common sense tells me, particularly when you have Priya Chaudhry, who is very articulate about due process. She was on Roland Martin Unfiltered in a very lengthy and detailed interview, saying very, very bluntly that Alvin Bragg is a huge problem in this. And that, hey, we all thought that he was going to be a black prosecutor who was going to be progressive and it was going to be different, and it wasn't. So I think they got a taste of that and said, okay, let's put a gag order.
It was the press coverage that didn't favor the prosecutor.
Right.
Not necessarily the leakage of discovery material, but it kind of painted a different picture of this prosecutor. And to that point, I saw a tweet post trial where the prosecutor, Alvin Bragg, directed others to go to ABC to look at his narrative of how he feels who Jonathan Majors was, the post trial. Did you see that tweet?
I did not. Tell me about it.
So he tweeted out, and you can, if you go back to the date you were in court, I don't have the tweet in front of me, but essentially he was, I guess, doing his quasi press release on Twitter and said that basically this case was about someone that was perhaps controlling, I'm paraphrasing, or sort of abusive to the person. But then he said to get a better understanding, go to at ABC News. Why are you at any media outlet is beyond me. You had, again, you said it was like 17 to 20 media outlets in the courtroom. I would feel a little, I would feel a certain way if you just go to Newsmax to get the real truth, the real truth, not what the real reporters are actually reporting.
That's interesting. Well, you might notice that, of course, and by the way, I used to work at ABC News years ago in New York and Washington, D.C. I suspect that what was going on is that ABC was one of their many, news platforms of choice when it came to messaging. But I have to say that I would say that almost everyone in that courtroom, I didn't see any reporting that was in any way in conflict with what the prosecutors would wanted to have seen in the paper. No one challenges their narrative. No one says, well, wait a minute, John Majors is on a video running away from this woman. She was arrested for assault. She locked him out of his place. She texted him 32 times, 5 seconds before locking him out of his place. Why is he arrested? What is going on here? You see, it's all very interesting when we talk about the history of the patriarchy, misogyny, the way that women have been treated. That's all true. That history matters. And that history came up in the courtroom. But the history of the way Black males are treated in the United States, and specifically in the jurisdiction of New York, in Manhattan, Amadou Diallo, Sean Bell, we could go on and on. Why isn't that history relevant in terms of the way Mr. Majors was treated? Because he was assumed guilty, not only, it would seem to me, by these prosecutors, but by the media, which has absolutely no concept in their head about looking at the way he's looked at, which is somehow instantly guilty because some woman showed up and said something, even though there's not very much evidence to verify what she's saying. And then we have a video of her chasing him, which, as you know, if you turn that around and that's Mr. Majors chasing Miss Jabari, I mean, Absolutely. It's game over. It's game over. So I find it problematic when we only platform the history of certain people, and then we ignore all this other very obvious history, not only in America, but specifically in New York.
Crystal, are you there? So I think Crystal might have stepped away, but let me ask you a question. There were reports initially of strangulation and choking and all this weird stuff. And I say weird because it wasn't the outcome, or it may not. I don't know if the jury even heard that part. Where did that come from?
It came from the body camera footage of one of the cops putting his hand to his neck while he was speaking to Miss Jabari as she was on the floor of Mr. Majors's. I thought it was I thought it was a closet, but apparently it was a bathroom. And it's an interesting development because one of the things that was inadmissible in evidentiary terms was the audio portion of the police body camera. I have no idea why we couldn't listen to the audio of the police body camera, but somehow that happened. And so the cop makes a motion to his neck as if to indicate choking. One of the other reasons why that's important is in the Kevin Porter case, which is another case that Alvin Bragg's office is handling, there was a allegedly false allegation that Kevin Porter choked his girlfriend, which his girlfriend said didn't happen. So there seems to be a theme here of black males choking people and being accused of strangulation, and then those charges being dropped later. But because we can't hear the audio version, it's hard to tell what that police officer is trying to indicate. One of our friends and colleagues on YouTube found that and really made a big commentary on it. And, again, not something you would have found in the mainstream media.
But people ran with that, and I say people, the public ran with that. It was reported, obviously, because someone in the press reported it. And it's interesting because of that. Throughout the course of me covering it and tweeting about it, no one dispelled that until it got to the point of when the jury was seated. Or at some point, it was dispelled that didn't even happen, and that probably came out towards the conclusion of the trial. But the potential jury pool is already tainted. They're tainted already.
Right. And that should be a point of appeal. I mean, because you're right. Well, you know how it works. Usually when the police say something, the media runs with it. See, the media is not interested in anything other than clicks to a website and click-through rates on ads. They are not interested in what is factually accurate. That ship sailed several years ago. And quite frankly, there is no law, there's no defamation law that can stop the media from printing effectively anything they want to print. And I, as somebody who's been a crisis manager for several people, I know this for a fact. Like, particularly if that client is an elected official, you literally can say anything and put it in the paper, and there is no legal recourse for that person for against the news organization to stop that train from going down the track. So when somebody says, when some prosecutor anonymously tells some paper that, oh my goodness, John Majors strangled her, they can print that with almost zero risk, which is what they did.
Okay, so Crystal, hearing this, obviously false information, why do you think that it is important? And you've done PR for many years.
Mm-hmm.
It is important to get ahead of these false claims as someone, and you did crisis management as well, Lauren, to get ahead of this at every turn, as well as what Priya Chandri was doing with talking to the press. Why is it important to get ahead of these false rumors immediately?
Well, I think this is a great example of why it's really important to do that. And to also, I think as people that work with, as crisis management teams and PR firms, agencies, management companies that represent Black talent, it's important for us to speak out when our talent is treated differently when it comes to these type of scandals. I think one of the things that Jonathan Major's team had to deal with was endorsements and other companies that he was affiliated with withdrawing their support, financial support, and also his professional support for his career because of the allegations. Before the court case had even, before a date had even been set, there was talk of him being dropped from this project. He obviously wasn't, but there was a lot of talk, a lot of people were reporting that he was going to be dropped. I think there was a U.S. Army commercial, and they announced that they were severing their relationship with him. I think that it's important for us to make sure that we are refuting things. I think the public forms their opinion. Public perception is very dangerous, especially now more than ever. And the public formed their opinions on this long before the trial was even set. And I think that it would have been nice for me. I would probably have suggested he actually speak out. A lot of times in the past, it's like, don't say anything, don't say anything, don't say anything. But at this point, because news outlets, blogs, people are not waiting for the facts. They're just going with what's salacious at the moment. And this case ended up like, to Lauren's point, Jonathan Majors just played a very aggressive, angry, violent character and was a co-host in a major film with Creed, with Pit Against Michael B. Jordan. And so the audience was left with that image of him. And then we see that there are allegations between him and this young lady. And even though information came out that she was being aggressive towards him, that that picture, those images were really stamped in the public's mind. And then when we see these other organizations pulling their support and we're not hearing from Jonathan Majors, I think people, form their own opinions. And once those opinions are formed, it's very hard to backtrack. It's very hard to backpedal. And you know that. I mean, once the public has decided that someone is guilty, regardless of if it's court, if that's been said in a court of law or it's been proven, the public perception doesn't often change. You know that when you're putting out headlines and a press release goes out, people believe what they hear that connects with the negative image a lot more than the positive. And when something comes out later refuting that, people usually don't connect with it. So I think it's important for talent to speak up for themselves. I think gone are the days where you can allow your publicist or your lawyer to speak. I think it's important for us to counsel talent. If they're innocent, they need to get ahead of that. It's really important for their team to get ahead of it, but it's important for their fans to actually hear from them as well.
Lauren, as a member of the Black press, I've been a member of Black press for 30 plus years. How disheartening is it for you, someone that is a member of the press, because clearly you did a great job in your reporting, to not see more people in these type of cases that look like us reporting the stories?
Well, that's been the case my entire time in the media, including when I was in college and in high school. I mean, so that's never been. I've worked now in politics and in media back and forth, back and forth. Okay, and I'm telling you, the whole thing comes down to who is in that room making that decision. And when who is in that room making that decision doesn't look like us, it is hugely problematic, which is why the Roland Martins and the fella, I don't know why I can't remember his name, the guy that owns the Griot, they are on the right path in terms of we have
Byron
to
Allen?
own. Yes, thank you, Byron Allen. Uh, you know, this idea that you can spend your entire life arguing with people in the editorial meeting, it is a waste of time. Okay, I mean, to the extent that you do have certainly journalists out there who are white that do know the history, they care about the history. I've had it happen many times representing clients in a crisis management situation where you had a reporter who wanted to explore certain narratives, but their editor stops them. So there's always like somebody. To Crystal's point, we live in an age where this Williams Connolly mode of PR is over. Okay, you cannot, and I know it's difficult. I work with attorneys all the time, trial attorneys all the time, and there's this idea that you can't say anything because they can use it against you in court. I totally get all that. You have to fill the box with your information. You have to fill the box with your story. There's no better example of this. My mother's from Virginia, but I grew up in New York, than Donald Trump. Donald Trump understands how to fill the box with his information. It doesn't matter that he's lying. It doesn't matter that it's incorrect. Our media spent a year wrapped around the axle trying to figure out if they wanted to say he was lying. Okay, so Crystal's absolutely correct, 3,000 times over, when you say you got to get out there and you got to be talking all the time. And if the judge put a gag order on the thing, okay, get somebody else to talk. Get your mother, your father, your cousin, somebody that can appear in front of that camera on a regular basis after every day in court and be talking. Because if you don't do that, to exactly what Crystal said, the media will print what they print. They will not go back to it. I've had clients where we found information that the person accusing them was a liar. They had criminal records, they had medical records that they were batshit crazy. Nobody cared. You go back, and I'm talking the New York Times and the Washington Post. I'm not talking some small paper that can't afford to investigate. I'm talking the New York Times and the Washington Post. I'm telling them, look, these are the facts we found. These are court records. These are criminal records. This person did this before. This person might be a scammer. No one cares because the paper doesn't want to admit they messed up. They don't want to open themselves up to defamation lawsuit. And so they're content with destroying somebody and walking away. So that's what this is. And you have to recognize that. And Jonathan Majors' people need to really wise up on that particular point.
I just want to add to that really quickly, Dennis, what Lauren said. I think even if there's a gag order, it's really important. Perception extends beyond the actual case, right? And so I think if in my opinion, if we saw Jonathan Majors, because the only sightings I've seen of Jonathan Majors since this case broke, is him with Megan Good, moving from different places to place, right? I believe he was at Essence Music Festival. I was there. He was there with Megan. It felt very much like he was not speaking out, and that makes people not trust you. Even if he wasn't able to talk about the court case, I think it would have been great to see him. I mean, even if he had to be working out, you need to keep yourself in the public eye. And there's no reason to talk about the case all the time. But I think you have to start to connect and build a connection with fans so that they know that you're still there. When you hide out, when you're seen, I mean, obviously, we don't know, we didn't know anything about this romance with Megan Good until after this case, after the case broke. And so to me, that looked very suspicious. As a publicist, I know, I've been a part of putting people together because of the way it looks. And so I felt like that was an obvious, almost like an admittance of something was wrong on his side, even if it was just trying to connect with Black women. But I still didn't see him talking. I didn't see him laughing. He always looked very somber. And something as simple as that can be very damning when you're dealing with the court of public opinion. And as we know, jurors are a part of, I mean, eventually are a part of of a trial. So I think that it would have been beneficial to see him living, to see him talking, even if he wasn't doing roles, to see him actually the lifestyle. What are you doing? What is going on? Where are you guys? See him laughing. I've never seen him laugh. Right. And so those are the type of things that I think his PR team should have been doing to kind of offset that image, because the public a lot of times doesn't disconnect you from your roles. They connect artists with their music, they connect actors with their roles. And so you have to do your job to make sure that you're offsetting that and you're showing the personality, you're showing the many dimensions of that person outside of just what they've seen on television or on their seat, on their radio.
So basically, his appearance should have been he should have been more humanized in this case and not just look like someone just walking in and out of the courtroom.
Hell yeah. And here's the thing, I could see the gag order issue, but on that last day because you realize an appeal is coming and a sentencing is coming. So of course you get the fact that they can't exactly be saying anything. But I mean, on that last day when he walks out, you have to say something. And if you got to do a one-on-one interview or say something. I mean, one of my clients was Justin Fairfax, the former governor of Virginia, who was accused right at a moment when it looked like he was going to be the governor of Virginia. We had Ralph Northam in a scandal. We had him in every interview. Yeah, we had him in every interview we could get our hands on. And anybody said that they needed an interview, he said yes.
He was very, very accessible to the media, and I appreciate
every
that.
Question, right? Because if you don't answer every question, first of all, if you're innocent of what you're accused of, why aren't you answering every question? You should be in a posture of, I can't wait to talk to the media because I've been falsely accused. My life is being destroyed, so I can't wait to be talking. And that's exactly the posture he had, because of course there was something terribly wrong with what was happening. So, I mean, it's hard. It's extremely difficult because people do have reasons that make sense. They have young kids sometimes that they don't want to see their kids in some interview talking about, controversial issues about sexual violence. I totally get it. These things last forever. You're on video talking about this information. Your parents see it. In the case of John Majors, his mother was there at the courtroom every day. They did one good job they did do in a PR sense is when they walked in and out, he always had women around him. Yeah, he had his girlfriend with him. He had his mother with him. He had his aunt with him. There were women around him. The mistake they made, and Crystal made this point a few minutes ago, is that he should have been smiling in and out, because that video just rolls, it re-racks, it rolls forever. And you got to look like you're innocent if you're innocent. And there was a lot of reasons, there were a lot of facts here on the table that indicate that what happened here was over prosecution, and they should have leveraged that, in my view.
I mean, he should have been signing autographs. He should have been doing, I mean, the 1-2 step. I mean, but to your point, Lauren, TD Jakes recently just responded while not responding, and people made clips of him not responding, but not responding. It went viral. So if you say too much, people twist it in the age of social media, and you don't know if his messaging will be well received, unless we have someone like a Crystal or Lauren that is coaching him on his messaging and in a natural form, or me for that matter, because I also do crisis management for certain people. I can't say who, but I get that part, but I don't get the part where he wasn't more engaging to the public because he knew the cameras are always on when he was moving around. How you doing? Smile, everything. Be the likable guy. I just that part I just couldn't understand.
And I think he made the pivot to try to connect with Black women just way too late. Like I think that that's something that our talent needs to know. When you abandon your fan base, and if you are a Black man, your fan base, the majority of your fan base is going to, your authentic fan base is going to be Black women. And so showing up at Essence Festival with Megan Good was.
Okay, I think
She's back.
she doesn't have a do not disturb one, but I think what Crystal is going to say is she think him showing up at Essence Festival but making good might have been playing in the public's face. I don't know.
Oh no, absolutely. The autograph thing was great point. Go ahead, Crystal. What were you going to say?
You're muted, Crystal. Your sound is off. So I'm gonna go out and come back in. I'm gonna go out and come back in because you had a phone call, and I know that probably would interfere with you. So go out and come back in. I'm gonna take you out and bring you back in. Hold on. Let me bring you out, take you out, and bring you back in. I'm gonna take you out, and you're gonna click on the link. Okay. Okay, let's see here. She'll have to come back in. So I think that was a important part just for the public perception, but more importantly, the talking to the media sometimes, during these type of situations, it helps. You want to come across as the likable guy. You're about to be casted as a superhero in one of the biggest Marvel productions, and people want to. You know how it is. We want to hear from the people that are being accused. We want to get a soundbite or something. Let us know. Like, hey, man, I didn't do this.
Right.
I don't know.
I will say that typically people who are falsely accused of something or there's some big misunderstanding, they're chomping at the bit to talk. Chomping at the bit. I mean, you've seen it before in the media where people who did not talk maybe years later said, I really, really wanted to talk, but my attorneys told me not to. And again, I totally understand why that was the case back in the 80s, 90s. We don't live in that world anymore. It is continuous 24/7 content. And if you're not in that content stream filling it with your information, you will lose by default. The other side knows that. One of the reasons why the Me Too movement loves to play sort of what I want to be very specific when I say the Me Too movement. So it's really run by the National Women's Law Center in Washington, D.C. Their messaging is very specific about don't ever question women. Don't ask questions. If you're asking questions, you're slut shaming. Believe all women was their primary hashtag in the beginning. They, of course, changed away from that. Time's Up then went defunct. I think it was last year. But the point of their messaging oftentimes was you're just believing one person who's telling a story, and then you're not listening to the other person for whatever reason.
And that's dangerous, Lauren. That's very dangerous.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not how we play in journalism. When journalism, we're supposed to find out both sides of every story. And you'll often hear a lot of journalists, particularly the ones in that Gen Z, Gen Y generation, say things like, well, there's no other side to sexual assault. Well, first of all, how do you know there was a sexual assault unless you hear what the other side was? So, I mean, there's this assumption that, I know what happened, so I don't have to ask any questions. What I actually think it comes down to is people are afraid to ask these questions because it's sensitive subject matter. It is extremely sensitive subject matter. It's also criminal subject matter. And as somebody who is the daughter of a law enforcement officer, I have grown up with the idea, and when you grow up with cops in the house, My nephew's a cop, my dad was a cop, my boyfriend right now is a cop. Right? When you grow up with people like that, you're hearing war stories all the time. Some of them are
That's
true,
right.
some of them are false. And many of them are true. My father used to tell me some stuff that was unbelievable when I was a kid, just to scare me to come home early. And a lot of that stuff is true. But what you come to understand is that you have to check. And in the journalistic world, you absolutely have to check. But the Me Too movement has been very good at getting reporters and news organizations to not ask too many questions and just assume that, oh, this is a major massive problem that's happening to everybody, and therefore there's no way that Miss Jabari could possibly be lying. So why would you be questioning her? Why are we going into that? Like, there's that whole spirit, which, by the way, I think mirrors the entire thing that Ida Wells was dealing with in the late 1800s, which was this idea that we have accused somebody, we're white and we've said it, and therefore no one dare question us. That is a mirror of what Ida Wells was dealing with. All right. So, I
Right.
mean,
Absolutely.
someone has to speak out against that because it is completely against due process. And for Black people, in particularly Black males, as we know from the history, it's particularly dangerous.
And do you believe like the Me Too movement organization is in Washington is very influential to corporations, media corporations, not smaller organizations like independents, but the bigger corporations? And do you think how much influence do you think the Me Too movement have on these big media corporations?
A huge amount of influence. In fact, they are in a fiduciary relationship in some cases. You might remember the scandal around Les Moonves at CBS
Yes.
caused Times Up at the time, and of course, Times Up is defunct now, but Times Up was operational at the time, to demand that CBS give Times Up his severance, which was like $8 million. It turned out that CBS did exactly that. They gave Times Up millions of dollars. And then later on, we watched Gail King announce on the air that there was a production partnership between CBS and Me Too and Tarana Burke. That was announced on the air. So now you have a content partnership being announced, right? So they were in concert with each other. So why would anybody think that there would be any objective reporting on that subject matter if, in fact, these people are in concert? They're actually doing business together. There's also, if you look at a lot of the women's magazines, and this makes perfect sense, right? Glamour magazine is one of them. You see also Variety, Hollywood Reporter. There are clear agreements going on between the movement and some of these media platforms. And like I said, some of it makes sense. It would be like as if Ebony magazine had some sort of partnership with Black Lives Matter. Of course, Ebony magazine is effectively defunct. But I'm just saying you can see some of these political alliances being made between a news platform and a political activist group. Okay, you see it with Fox News, of course, with the Republican Party and Fox News. You see it on the left with MSNBC and I mean, when you're hiring, nothing against anybody. I know Simone Sanders; she's a great person. But when you're hiring people who were Biden staffers onto your news staff, that tells everybody, of course, that you're a progressive station. Nothing wrong with that. They get
Absolutely.
to do this under the First Amendment. But of course, the problem is in a journalistic space, obviously, certain views are going to be compromised and certain things are going to be suppressed. I mean, that's sort of obvious.
And
But
you
you can
referenced
see,
the Hollywood Reporter and the other outlets that are perhaps being put applying or being backed by organizations like Times Up, but they were also the ones that were covering Jonathan Majors.
right,
They
exactly. And
covered
of course, right, that's exactly right. And again, under the First Amendment, there's nothing in here about whether or not a news organization can be opinionated. In fact, we consider certain parts of journalism, opinion and op-ed, as quote journalism. Now, I'm old school. I'm the type of person who, if your mother tells you that she loves you, if somebody tells you that the sun is shining, you're pulling back the shade. I don't believe anything unless I see evidence that indicates that something happened. If I wasn't there and I
same here.
didn't witness it, how did I know that that didn't happen or not? And people, there's no penalty for lying in our society, quite frankly, other than being under oath in a courtroom. There's no penalty for lying. If you lie to the media, nobody cares. The media doesn't even care. I've seen the media print stories of people who were not telling the truth. It got in the paper. It remains in the paper, remains online. They're not changing that. That thing got them traffic. They're not looking to change that. That's not bothering anybody because there's no penalty. So there
Right.
is a clear connection. You definitely see it on CBS. A clear connection between a movement, an activist movement that I think meant very well. I think Tarana Burke, no relation, meant very well. The issue of sexual violence is extremely important. It had never been openly discussed until the Me Too movement shows up. There were certain aspects of that subject matter that had not been dealt with, that women were getting ignored on certain topics. It's totally true. There is a patriarchy, there is misogyny. So I totally agree with what they were focused on. But the problem is, in practical day-to-day reality, what it has meant all too often, in my view, is people making it very easy for false allegations to get published and destroy people's lives. And you probably saw that there was the Adult Survivors Act in New York, and L.A. Reid and Jamie Foxx was accused. Yesterday, Jermaine Jackson was accused by somebody from 1988, which explained to me how you're going to prove or disprove that from 1988. So now they've taken down the statute of limitations, which I think is going to go to the Supreme Court and get overturned on these laws, because that statute of limitations, it has to. So go ahead.
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
The reason why I say it has to is because the benefit of having police, and people may argue me on this point, but the benefit of having specialized units to investigate these claims early on is so we won't need things like these survivor acts the way they're written now, because no one can go back 20 years and say for certainty that this actually happened the way this person said it happened, because I don't know what I ate for lunch 2 weeks ago at this time. Right. So there is importance of going to the police quick, and I think opening the door, and the Governor Hochul in New York opened the door for perhaps fraudulent behavior as well. The door's open.
And not only that, I think we have seen a few cases that I would define as politically motivated. I mean, certainly when Tara Reid accused Joe Biden, the media had no problem investigating that and figuring out there might be something wrong with that story. But we've seen it happen now to several politicians. Chuck Schumer had a weird allegation that came up. Bob Mueller, which was not true. Bob Mueller, not true. Congressman in California named Tony Cardenas. There's been several allegations out there. There was even an interesting thing where Trey Songz and Chris Rock, and I think it was the same attorney, brought forward a lawsuit, civil lawsuit.
I talked to that attorney last week.
Yeah, and basically it was okay, and you have to understand too that the person who's the plaintiff is a Jane Doe in the lawsuit, so we don't even know who the person accusing these guys is. So they throw it out. They ask for $2 million, right? And then they say, okay, well, we're suing you, and he did this, and that. I'm not even going to say the words because I don't think any of this was true. And you'll remember, too, Snoop Dogg, who, of course, his real name is Calvin Brodus. But Snoop Dogg, right before that weekend of the Super Bowl 2 years ago, someone sued him. And it got kicked. I mean, it got dismissed. I mean, but the point was, in that moment, he's getting sued for $2 million. It's in the paper. It's online. Oh, my God, Snoop Dogg's getting sued. So the pressure is on the person who has a public profile to protect. The person was a Jane Doe, so we don't know who it was. And that's the same attorneys keep doing it. So they're hoping that the Chris Brown or the Trey Songz or Snoop Dogg is just going to give them $200,000 or $300,000, $400,000 to go away. And what's stopping them from doing that? Absolutely nothing. Nothing's stopping them from doing that. I mean,
and it's funny you brought that story up, because the same attorney is also representing this other individual with Conor McGregor. So she has the Conor McGregor claim, the Chris Rock, which that was not Chris Brown, which was pretty much dispelled because of some text messages. And then the
Right.
Trey Songz that's currently going on in Florida, which they have asked uh, the judge. Well, this lawyer's facing some type of bar situation right now. There
Right.
was also some allegation of trying to pay a witness to say certain things.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
don't know if that's true, but I would
Right.
just say that this is why you can't take the position that every person is telling the truth when they tell their story 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's
Well,
dangerous.
absolutely. And if you pay closer attention, you'll notice Deshaun Watson, Mel Tucker, to keep it sports for a second, and Trevor Brower, right? So Mel Tucker lost an $80 million contract because some woman decides, well, I think I'm going to tell this story now, just as you're doing this $80 million contract, because they were on the phone. Oh, okay, well, nothing proven, nothing in court. He's damaged by 80 million bucks. Trevor Bauer's accuser was straight up lying. And it was like proven in the, he had just like the Chris Brown thing, he had the text messages, he had video that showed that she wasn't telling the truth. Now, the reason I bring those up is um, the media doesn't then come back and say, oh, wow, Trevor Bauer, this woman, she's not telling the truth. Or Mel Tucker, wow, something seems strange here. USA Today broke the Mel Tucker story. They won't let it go because we've headed in a direction with the narrative that Mel Tucker is guilty. So no matter what comes out now, we're not changing that direction. So when Mel Tucker's attorney put out a bunch of text messages that showed that there was a hell of a lot more to the story than everybody thought, the judge in that case put a gag order on the attorney. And I said, oh, yeah, there's a gag order now because it shows that, there's a problem with this story. Right. I mean, so it's amazing
Right.
how these gag orders come out the minute the men have some sort of really hard evidence. I think another sad case that's out there that hasn't resolved itself is Matareza. Matareza was a Buffalo Bill punter. He gets accused by some woman at a party. It turns out that she sues. Well, actually, it turns out that the criminal case gets dropped. He sues her. She sues him. They settle out. He's about to sue her. But effectively, the story was not true. That's the thing that nobody seems to want to focus on. The story was not true, and it damaged his career. And he still hasn't been able to recover from that. So people realize that that type of sexual violence allocation is so serious and so damaging, particularly when you have somebody who is a man of color. You may remember the Michael Irvin story. So Michael Irvin was saved
Absolutely.
by
We've seen the
videotape.
video.
Right. I mean, so it just, but when it happens, is the media then coming back and saying, okay, well, wait a minute, this was the wrong story? Not necessarily. They sort of leave it, they sort of go quiet. That's what we typically see.
To your point, a story that I was closely involved in. It was the $20 million lawsuit against Usher Raymond. That lawsuit, because of some good investigative work on my part, didn't go anywhere. It was a $20 million lawsuit that went viral and so forth. He never paid that woman a penny. And I don't know if many people thought he paid her anything. He never paid that woman a penny.
Yeah.
I can't go into why he never paid that woman a penny, but let's
Right.
just say that he had a very strong case based on good journalism.
Right. Right.
So
And also, I mean, along those lines, I have a friend who, Stacy Brown, who writes for Black Press USA, sat in on the last Cosby trial. He was very convinced. I had never sat in on it, and frankly, not a huge fan of Cosby since the pound cake speech. But I was listening to him because he'd covered it. What happens is that in a courtroom, there's a very small group of people listening, for very long periods of time in detail to what's going on. Most of the public doesn't get to do that, and it is amazing when you walk out and realize how hard it is to get those details to the public. The Johnny Depp case to me was a great example of what happens when everyone gets to see. This is why I like it when everybody gets to see something, because they can see it with their own eyes. They can see the evidence. The public typically is very savvy and very smart about picking certain things up, and it makes it easier, I think, as a journalist to explain, because you can just point to the video, we can roll the video, etc., and so on. And you can bounce theories. maybe I did miss something that Miss Heard said that I didn't pick up on, or Johnny Depp said. So I think that group analysis to me is a good thing. And when I see that courts and judges are scared of that, I get very suspicious. I get
Very
very
and listen, I'll tell you this. I probably have more cameras in the courtroom in hip hop than anyone in hip hop. I've literally had access to courtrooms with cameras as a person of a color, as an
Mhm.
independent journalist than probably anyone. That because in Georgia, great access, and it for a long time. So now more people are now trying to get in the courtroom and get these things shown to everyone. I don't know why judges, I don't know why the Supreme Court doesn't at least allow cameras in certain type of cases,
right,
some drug cases.
right,
But because it keeps, especially when you have a lifetime appointment, you
right.
don't know what's going on with that judge in a federal case.
That's
Federal
right.
judges have lifetime appointments. So, and there's some judges will let you bring their laptops in, some, but they have
Right,
discretion.
right,
Hopefully Judge Roberts does something in the next year or two and say, hey, why don't we have cameras in the courtroom? You want to be able to keep people honest. You don't hear
well,
audio. You don't get a chance to hear the audio. Or
right,
even most recently with the Mark Meadows case in Georgia, where Judge Jones was able to preside over some of the defendants' claims of immunity. Well,
right,
a lot of press covered that. The audio played out in courtroom, but it wasn't played to the public. And I think when you have a case like this talking about election interference, the public
right.
needs to see everything. It has to be full disclosure. And this is what Judge
Absolutely.
McAfee allowed to hear in Georgia with Fonnie Willis's case,
Right.
because you can't hide stuff like this.
That's right. That's right. And there's no reason. See, to me, the fact that the public is paying for all this, they should be able to see it just on the basis of that, right? Also, I think that it's hard to explain. You see, the media has become so partisan in the iteration in the days that we live in now. So I think you could probably have been okay back in the 80s and 90s, maybe trusting journalists to fairly tell you what was going on. Now journalism is based on left-right media organizations.
That's it.
And so it's hard through that filter to trust exactly what's going on here. And with Me Too reporting, there's a lot of social pressure. We're not supposed to be questioning women. This is a time when they should be heard. And men have been doing this for years, and we've been letting them get away. So I totally get where that comes from. It comes from a long history, and it makes sense from a historic standpoint. But individual cases should not be based on broad brush generalities, right? It comes down to evidence in courtroom.
That's
And
right.
I've seen it where, I'm sure you've seen it too, where the prosecutors come out with some big loud announcement, so and so is guilty, and we got him, and this and that. And then you get into the courtroom and ain't nothing going on in there in terms of evidence. Like the evidence falls apart, the witness isn't there, and it's a mess. And so I've seen it a million times. And so I always wait to be in the courtroom to decide anything in my mind.
Right. It's a lot of posturing. It's a lot of
Right,
posturing before you get to, even in this case with Trump, we saw the press
right,
conference 11:30 in the evening press conference of the
right,
indictment. There was
right.
a lot of fluff in there. Funny, it was a lot of fluff. It was a lot of fluff in there. But but then as we look at the listen to the hearings, and while some of the defendants, 3, 4 took pleas already. I don't know if Trump will ever see the courtroom in Georgia. I don't know if he'll ever see a courtroom in Georgia, him particularly. Now, his
uh,
co-defendants,
I think of all the cases, she actually has the strongest case. I think Bragg and uh, the attorney general in New York, I think she has a weak case. This idea that he lied about the value of his homes. Who cares? I just don't think that case is going to fly. I think Fannie Willis's case is actually one of the stronger of all the indictments in all the cases. But you're right. I mean, I did have to say on Roland Martin Unfiltered last night because it's just true. I know that Maine took the former president off the ballot. I said that's interesting. He has not actually been convicted of anything. Although I think we can define what happened on Jan 6 as treason, certainly, but that has to be argued out in an
It has
evidentiary
to be argued
process.
out.
Yeah, and so
Due
I'm not a
process.
yeah, I'm a big due process person, and even for people I don't like. So I do think there's enough evidence, certainly in his case, to argue treason, and but I do think we need to play it out. He's got to actually be convicted. That actually has to happen. That hasn't happened yet, so we'll see.
So you just said Maine took him off the ballot?
Maine took him off the ballot last night. Yes, off the presidential primary ballot.
Okay,
Yes.
so they do have there's a Supreme Court uh this should be argued in front of the Supreme Court. I don't know if that should happen in the next couple of weeks. Wouldn't you think?
It should. Yes, it should. I'm gonna have to do a video on that. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it should happen in the next couple of weeks because
Right.
I mean it does appear that it was election interference. It does appear this is election interference because this has never happened. I don't recall this ever happening. This them removing the front runner of a party off the ballot off the ballot of a state. That's just kind of crazy.
Yeah, and my view of it is put him on the ballot, and people in the Democratic Party. I was saying to one of the Democrats last night on the show, beat him. Like, why would you not? I like the thing of him being on the ballot too, because I want to see who's supporting this guy. What's going on here? Like, who is going to get on a camera and say that they're backing this person? Now, of course, we have a lot of people who have no problem doing that. They've been bold the whole time. Okay, but let's play it out. I don't like the idea of some bureaucrat sitting someplace making a decision that the voters should make. The voters should make that decision. Even with George Santos, I thought it was wrong to take him out of there. It reminded me of Adam Clayton Powell, even though they did not take him out of office. I think they vacated the seat before he was sworn in. Then he got it back from the Supreme Court. But I don't like the look of that. I think that the voters chose George Santos. Those New York voters in that district chose George Santos. We may not like it, but that's who they voted in. So it's like, why is he getting thrown out of Congress unless the voters are deciding that? So I don't like that sort of trend in itself. And so I think Trump should be seated on the ballot.
This is going to be a discussion that I'm sure you and I'll probably have as
Yep.
this case proceeds. Because I'm a part of the pool that is actually shooting the trial.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yeah, so I'm shooting it, and I'm going to be dropping before my next pool. Because I'm on pool assignment in January.
Oh,
so good. I'm going to do a recap of some of the stuff that had actually got picked up everywhere from my coverage. But we got to come back and talk about this. I want to talk about the last why a lot of people come here today for, and I want to thank you for coming on the platform in such a short notice. I see what you're doing out there. I want people to follow you. I've been retweeting some of your videos, and I commend you for the work that you've done thus far in shedding light not just on Jonathan Major's case, but the nuances that exist when we don't cover these cases. That people look like us cover these type of cases, because ultimately we can be the benefactors of these type of prosecutions as well if we don't do the job the way we were taught to do it.
Right. Yeah, I can be found, of course, on YouTube at Lauren Victoria Burke, and on Twitter.
I know I get you on Twitter.
I refuse to call it X because Elon Musk. This is my protest against Elon Musk to call it Twitter.
Right? Yeah.
It's at LV Burke. L is in Lauren, V is in Victor Burke, or Victoria Burke, and that's it. People can email me if they want. My DMs are open. I don't care. I could put my email in the chat. I'm fine with that. I mean, people contacting me does not bother me. Does not scare me. Does not do anything. And there'll be much more to come. There's a lot to talk about, to say the least.
Absolutely.
To say that there's a lot more to talk about is an understatement. It's nice that you are where you are. I can't wait to see and hear more about the Fani Willis case. The appeal
and Young Thug as well. We're doing Young Thug as well.
Oh, really? Wow.
I'm cameras in the courtroom on that one as well.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah,
that's huge. Yeah, that is huge.
So
that will blow up.
lock in with me, and let's bring you on during during some of the breaks and talk about some of the what's development in both cases. And by the way, I had to say that wasn't my camera. The judge Glanville was screaming about.
Right.
It wasn't
Oh,
me.
oh, really? I missed that whole thing. I typically
Yeah.
don't cover celebrity. I cover members of Congress and politics in Virginia. And
Okay.
I
Okay.
locked on the majors because I just thought this can't continue. This cannot continue. I just could feel the railroad coming. Remember, we thought that it was going to get dismissed, his case. And then I heard that his girlfriend had been arrested for assault. I figured, okay, now definitely it's going to get dismissed. Then I hear that they're not going to prosecute the assault. I'm like, what? And then then they get into court with 2 misdemeanors. That's even crazier because in New York, we're talking a city of 8 million people. There's a lot going on here. We don't do
Right.
misdemeanors in open court. You don't do misdemeanors in open
Right.
court.
The whole misdemeanor
Right.
thing. I'm like, wait a minute.
So that's the
You
type. Yeah. Go ahead.
this is
Go
not a
ahead.
felony case. This is not a Supreme Court case.
Right.
This is a state court criminal court case.
That's right.
And
That's go ahead. Go ahead.
before you go, what do you think? What do you think will happen during sentencing in February? What do you think is going to happen? Probation?
God, I don't know. I don't think he'll get any time, but I'm the same person who didn't think that this would even be in court. So I'm bracing myself because I can see the stars coming into alignment for more things that we've never seen before. And anytime I see things, I was a history major in college. Anytime I see things that we've never seen before, somebody black is usually involved in that thing that we've never seen before. This historic thing that we've never seen that's negative usually involves a black person. So that's what history teaches us. So
We're
I'm very
the litmus of new laws.
yeah. And all of a sudden, it's like, and again, I'm not a big fan of Bill Cosby, but remember the Bill Cosby thing started with the statute of limitations being completely ignored. That's how that case reopened. I mean, that had never happened before. And of course,
Never happened
ooh,
before.
with a black guy, we got to make it happen. So I'm just very nervous. I don't think he'll get any time, but we'll see.
Well, I know I'm looking at Bragg. I'm giving Bragg the side eye because
Yeah.
this
Uh-huh.
doesn't look progressive to me.
Yeah, somebody needs to explain what's going on in that office. He needs to explain. And also now we're at a point where I don't know who the Manhattan. Funny thing, I know the president of the Brooklyn NAACP. My grandmother's house happens to be in Brooklyn. I don't know who the Manhattan NAACP is, but Derek Johnson, Al Sharpton. I'm going to tag them on that last
And why
video.
they've been quiet? Like,
I have no idea because they backed his candidacy. He's the first black Manhattan DA in the history of the city of New York. I mean, he is a historic figure, Alvin Bragg. He's also fighting against Donald Trump, so there's a political reason to sort of leave him alone because of that. But they cannot allow over prosecution of black males like we're back in 1830. We cannot do that.
right, especially
Cannot
by a
do
black
that.
man.
Right.
Can't.
No way.
Just can't.
In fact, black, white, or whatever, but it's almost like we're sitting here talking about Alabama with some white throwback,
Right.
prosecutor. Where, this is not something that can continue.
Strong Thurman or somebody.
Right, exactly. And so this is 3 strikes you're out because Majors was number 3. The Adam Foss case, FOSS, look up that case.
Oh, I looked it up.
Kevin Porter. I mean, those 2 cases should have never happened. That should have never happened. And then he did Majors. So Majors was the 3rd thing that he did. No, that someone has to speak out about what's going on with that office.
And I just hope more people grasp that this guy was found guilty of a misdemeanor that probably would have been a DAT, a disappearance ticket by any other prosecutor. They wouldn't have spent this kind of resources for this case. Think about the money they spent for this.
Right. And that would usually be a conversation in the background, particularly if you found out that the 2 people had been mutually fighting in some way. So
Right.
you had evidence that both people laid hands on each other. So it's not like, okay, he did all the thing or she did all the thing. I'm not even sure that he did anything. We still don't have any real hard evidence that she broke.
We don't have that.
Yeah. So I am nervous because I feel like this is a trend, and what I find is nobody really cares. Nobody says anything when black people are involved. It's like everybody goes quiet. So black leadership has to say something at some point. about what's going on here.
Now's the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time. You don't have time to be playing around waiting. Thank you, Lauren V.
Thank
Burke. You great guest. I appreciate you. I really do.
Thank
But
you.
now we got to get a little messy over here.
Yep, I'll talk to you soon. All right.
Absolutely. Take care now. Bye. All right, guys. The moment you have been waiting for. The moment you have been waiting for. Let's see what we got going on here. What do we got going? Wait a minute. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So look at this. Look at what we got going on here. We have received a report through a confidential source that Jeezy's soon-to-be ex-wife, maybe it hasn't been stamped by a judge, but she, according to my sources, reached out to people that know Jeezy and trying to gain evidence of him cheating on her. So this is interesting because there was a prenup that was signed, and that prenup is from what I'm told, is an ironclad prenup that she would be entitled to certain things. Now, if he has in fact cheated on her, then the prenup is out the window. The prenup is out the window. What do you think about this, ladies and gentlemen? What do you think about this? So, according to my source, he was reached out from someone from her team looking to see whether or not that person could provide information to support her suspicions or her claims that he was cheating on her. So there was a report and there was a court filing that suggested that this is what she believes has happened. Now, was that a member of her private eye team that reached out to this individual? And I want to say this individual is not that friendly with Jeezy anymore, but worked very closely with him for years. And from what he told me was that he was not going to do anything to interfere with his divorce case, which I guess is good in light of the fact that the individual has issues with Jeezy now, but he wasn't playing the let me see if I can get back at Jeezy. So if she has information or if someone has information that it relates to possible cheating, they weren't getting it from him. So I thought that was real interesting. And I got the call last night. What did I think? I'm like, hey, man, that's on you. That's on you. That's you. They asked you. They didn't ask me. I know nothing. As far as I'm concerned, this has to be played out in the court. Right. And that's a good point. That's a good point. If there's no proof, then why are you fishing? Why are you fishing, allegedly? If there's no proof of him cheating and you're reaching out to not his enemies, but people that may have ulterior motive by throwing this man under the bus. So that's concerning. That's concerning. I mean, it's concerning that, this thing's playing out, and it's also concerning that she also had said in a filing that one of the concerns she has is that he owns weapons. Okay, he owned weapons when you married him. Was there concern then? What was the significance of her saying that in a court filing? I mean, in Georgia, you have the right to own firearms unless you don't have the right to own it. So when that was mentioned in the filing, I said, wait a minute. What does that have to do? You got a newborn baby, and I'm sure that she understands that because of who he is and, the nature of what he does and his being such a high-profile figure, that he will own firearms. Should that preclude him from having access to his child? Absolutely not. So why is this even significant? You know, why is this even significant? I mean, the depiction of a person saying that this person, well-known celebrity, person of color, you're concerned that he owns guns, is kind of um, gaslighting the situation, if you ask me. So I don't know if she's going to be successful in trying to get information to support her claim of infidelity. But right now, it seems like she's still fishing. That's the impression I got. She's still fishing. Allegedly, according to my source, they reached out. He decided not to help them, and he didn't even say if he had any information. But the point of the matter is, if you're reaching out, but you made claims that this man may have cheated on you, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. What I'm going to do now is we've been on this live for a minute. I'm going to drop the link, and I want to give you guys an opportunity to jump on here and give me your take on the topics that we discussed. My guest Crystal Jordan has left the building, but I'm dropping the link right now, so you can click on the link if you want to join the conversation. I give you a few minutes to come on in here. That is the link, and then let's talk about one. What do you think about this whole thing about the co-defendant in the lawsuit involving Tasha K, and whether or not the information that we revealed that no one reported on is going to be significant in their lawsuit? And that, for those who are joining in, we reported that the young lady Maisha Shakes, who is now a co-defendant in the civil suit, is also an individual that NBA star Ron Artest or Meta World Peace had to file a restraining order against her, and he's alleged some really interesting stuff. And it made me wonder why Kevin Hart didn't do his due diligence in hiring her, even with these really crazy claims. She did a video, Maisha did a video on her YouTube channel where she kind of alluded to the issue, but she didn't really go into it. But then when I did my research, as a journalist should do, it was reported on TMZ in 2016, I believe. And for those who don't recall the story, it happened in Los Angeles. And he said some things. The judge ultimately granted a restraining order. But what he has alleged is really interesting. So the link is there, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to come in, you can come in. If you want to come in, you can come in. The link is there. I don't know if I can't say unhinged, but let me say this. When I looked at the clip that is on my Instagram page, I believe. It's on my Instagram page where the young lady is laughing in the background, where Tasha K is talking about by any means necessary. She had a wicked laugh. I'm like, this is sounding kind of wicked here. Let me see what's going on with this person. Because that laughter was like, oh my goodness, what the heck going on? And sure enough, that was the first thing that popped up. That was the first thing that popped up. I'm like, wait a minute. And we know just from the Star Marie interview that Tasha K did back in, I want to say 2017, maybe 2018, that the young lady admitted herself on Star Marie Jones, admitted herself that she was going through some mental issues. And this girl might have been going through maybe a temporary mental issues. But, the fact that she brings someone on the platform that she could have found out this stuff as well, because most producers of shows are going to at least try to vet their guests. And that's part of what they do in order for them to be prepared for the show. So I don't know why she missed this. I'm not saying that she didn't know this, but the fact is that what we found, and we'll bring it up real quick one more time for those that are joining in. Let me see if I can pull up the pull up the clip here, the news article. Uh, you guys, hopefully, you guys can see that. No one's reported this. In all the reporting of the lawsuit, no one's reported this. So, you guys that are watching now, this is something that happened back uh, in, I believe, 2015. In 2015, where the NBA star Ron Artest says that this girl was basically stalking him, threatening with violence, and so forth. What's that all about? What is that all about? And why didn't Kevin Hart know about this when he hired her? So stuff is not really making sense, but it does give you an idea that this is going to be a very colorful trial if it makes it to the courtroom. It may get settled. I don't see I don't see it making. It may make it to the courtroom. Who knows? But does he have the time for this? Does he want to get? Does he? Is this issue with the assistant or Tasha K? The platform or Tasha K? There's some from what when I read the document, there are a few defects in the lawsuit. For example, Kiwi Studios is not in operation anymore, so that company has been dissolved. We learned that from the chapter 11 that company has been dissolved. So they may have to amend the complaint just to address the company that actually you should be suing if you're going to sue any company at all. Oh yeah, you didn't know that. Listen, Harry, you didn't know that. You didn't know that, Harry. You know everything, girl. You didn't know that. Come on. You didn't know that. That's significant, and no one reported this, Harriet. No one reported this. No one reported that existed. Like you actually have an issue with Ron Artest, and he may come out and speak at some point. He may be one of the witnesses in the civil case, and I believe they can call witnesses if there have been issues of perhaps. Well, he don't know the person, and I wonder. And she did a video, and she talked about it a little bit, and she said that her boyfriend, his nephew. I don't know if it's true or not, but the boyfriend, she had an issue with the boyfriend, her boyfriend that she was dating. She claimed she was dating this person. I don't know if that's even true. I don't know if that's even true because Ron Artest said, I don't met a world peace. I don't know this chick. So does she even know the boyfriend? But the name of the boyfriend, she said, is interesting because in the video that is on Tasha K Live, she also mentions the same name as I don't know if that's any connection, but they have the same name. Kevin Hart's photographer has the same name as former boyfriend. But I don't know if that's even a connection, but again, it's something to look into. So go look at the video. Listen, go look at her videos. I didn't even know she had a YouTube channel, but go look at her videos and tell me what you think. I'm not saying the woman's crazy or anything, but I'm saying that it's some very interesting things happening with this case. So yeah, so let me know if you have any questions about that story. We had a very interesting deep dive with the Jonathan Majors case with I would say journalist Lauren Burke, as well as this whole Jeezy and his wife allegedly trying to get information to implicate him in a cheating scandal. Let's see what happens. I dropped the link. I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds to click on the link, and then we're going to conclude this. If you have any questions, come on in. This is your time. This is the countdown. This is the countdown. You guys stand by. Stand by. Stand by. Okay, time's up. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. You missed it. You're part of the replay committee. Thank you for joining the show. I appreciate you. I really do. Hopefully you guys will be able to watch the entire video because we had a lot of stuff going on in this video. But you had to be here. You know, when I say pull up, you got to pull up. You can't wait till the last minute. You can't wait till the last minute. You had an opportunity to even ask some questions. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate you. I really do. I'm Dennis Byrne. Be sure to like, subscribe, and make sure you tell a friend to follow this channel. We're out of here.